Well, we'll get started, and if other people join us along the way, that will be fine. I'm Rich Mendola. I am with International Friendships. I serve as the CEO, and one of the things that we were wanting to do is respond in a positive way to the current situation and recognize the effect that it was having on different people, including our international friends. And one of the things that we learned was that as a result of people being confined and closed in, that a lot more conflicts were taking place between people. One of the sad things that was recognized that happened in China was once China opened up and the government's offices began to open up again, that one of the first things that happened was that the divorce court was flooded. That the number of people who went for divorces was like a lot right after the lockdown. And I have seen just a number of things that give evidence to the fact that the type of stress that's put on people who are not normally used to spending a lot of time together is a lot. And so we decided we would try and address that in a positive way. We see that some of you are internationals who are experiencing that stress and that situation. Some of us are Americans who have that stress, and some of us don't have that stress, but we are concerned about others who do, and concerned about helping those that are in a difficult situation or that are having conflicts. So whether you're here in order to help other people, or whether you're here because you're experiencing conflicts yourself, we hope this can be helpful to you. And I'm so glad to introduce to you Samson and Pat Wasao. Dr. Wasao, Dr. Samson Wasao, is a double international student. I say double because he first came for a master's degree at the Ohio State University, and then went back to Kenya, and then came back for a PhD degree at the Ohio State University. And it's amazing the experiences that God has given to him. After his PhD in 1995, he returned to Kenya and he got married along the way to Pat. And then they were actively involved in serving married couples. And they did the development of a family care ministry, and they spent a lot of time counseling people in premarital counseling, helping married couples. They served in men and women's ministries as well as children's ministries. So they have had a long time investment and involvement in helping couples to get along. And in his secular work, he was involved in development in Kenya, and he was connected to an NGO that was based in Nairobi and did work together with the United Nations. But after 20-some years of doing that in Kenya, he had a desire to come back to the United States and to give back into the same type of situation that he was in when he was an international student. And so he joined International Friendships, and now he is the National Training Director for International Friendships. So I'm very pleased to introduce to you Samson and Pat, and I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Thank you very much, Rich. Good afternoon, everybody. I don't know what times you are in time zones, but here in Columbus, Ohio, we are in the afternoon, and nice to see you. Thank you for taking the time to be with us. This is my wife, Patricia. We've been married, going to be 32 years next month, and we are glad to be here. So I would like to start by sharing with us the screen so that I do a short presentation on the topic of conflict to help us have some basis for discussions as we move forward. So I'm going to share the screen here in a minute. Okay. I hope everybody can see the screen. So Patricia and myself would like to just share briefly about conflict as we move forward. So this is going to be our schedule for the time together. I'll do a short presentation for about 10 minutes, Then I'll ask my wife, Patricia, to share short stories about our own situation during this lockdown, our own current experiences with the conflict, and how we are trying to manage the conflicts as a couple, but also with one of our daughters who lives with us currently. Then we'll go into breakout sessions where we'll provide you with some scenarios to discuss as a basis for provoking discussion, but you could go beyond those scenarios and discuss wider issues that relate to this pandemic lockdown and conflicts. Then we'll come back and discuss together as Rich guides us. Okay, so conflict essentially is a different of opinion or preference or a purpose when we have different views, different preferences, or we have different intentions or purposes. We tend to conflict with other persons whose opinions, whose preferences, whose purposes or goals or desires may be different from ours. So that leads to conflict, yeah? And so in a situation like we are in now, where there is very closeness of space and time, this kind of differences tend to come out a lot more conspicuously, yeah? And conflicts can lead us to either understanding one another better or misunderstanding one another. Conflict situations may lead to differences as we live together or as we share space and time together. We may decide to just live with those differences. Or some of us might decide to be silent, you know. I don't like something about my partner or my roommate or my spouse. I can't discuss it, so I decide to be silent about it, yeah? Because I don't want to confront the issue. Or sometimes people decide to separate, yeah? The conflict could be so difficult for the two that they decide the best ways to go are different ways. Another way conflicts can be, in terms of a broader result, is it can lead to great understanding. We can get closer with our spouses or with our roommates or with our partners, or we can increase communication as we address the conflict issues. And hopefully it can also lead us to unity, to being together, working together, and staying together and continuing together, yeah? Now, conflict, there are different scenarios or different ways or styles that people cope up with conflict, yeah? And then each of these styles has got specific results or consequences. They'll just share with us briefly. There's so much information about these styles, but I'll just summarize them into four main or four broad ones. So the first style is where a member of a relationship, a couple or a roommate or a friend, is the type that must win in a conflict situation, yeah? In this style, the person who must win usually tends to have the last word. And this style can be quite explosive depending on our temperaments, and it can tend to kill communication and eventually even destroy a relationship. In a situation where I must win and my spouse must lose, or my roommate must win and I lose, that becomes a relationship killer, yeah? Some of us tend to move towards must-win style of conflict resolution, yeah? It may help me to protect my pride, it may make me feel I'm the guy on top, but it doesn't lead to better relationships, yeah? So that's one style of conflict that we may need to just think about. The second one that I want us to just think about is this one about withdrawing or yielding. For some of us, in a conflict situation, we'd rather yield or withdraw or keep off because we don't want to face the issues that are being brought up by the conflict. So you back off or you yield. Now, the results of this is that, well, I might keep my peace, my partner might keep their peace, but we are really not connecting, yeah? Because in the sense that I may be depriving the other person of my ideas, or the other person might be depriving me of their ideas because somebody has backed off, somebody has decided to yield, yeah? This also leads to distance in the relationship. If somebody yields or backs off, it means we can't communicate, we can't talk, we can't interact over the conflict issues. So the relationships tend to be damaged in such situations. Or misunderstandings may remain. Yeah. If I back off or yield, it means that I'm not addressing the issue. I'm not addressing the problem. So the cause of the misunderstanding will remain. So it doesn't help in the situation. Yeah. And I may be also communicating to my roommate or my spouse or my partner that, well, your needs, your opinions don't matter. I mean, when I yield, I'm saying what I feel, what I think does not matter. You can stay the way you are, I stay the way I am. Let's have some kind of peace. Yeah, but you're communicating that, yeah, what you know, what you feel is not important. Yeah. And also, you are communicating to the other party that, yeah, they can always have their way. If I yield, then my spouse will always have their way. If you yield, then your roommate will always have their way. Is that the best way to do it? I don't know. We can discuss that. Yeah. The third style of dealing with a conflict is where you negotiate. Yeah. You negotiate. So in this style, you agree that, okay, I'll give up something and my partner or my spouse or my roommate will give up something because we want to continue together. We want to keep this relationship. We want to make it work as we move forward, yeah? So it may help to build the oneness and understanding as we negotiate, but negotiation sometimes leads us to still keep our sides, you know? Yeah, I've given up something, you've given up something, but we don't want to cross a line that is in between us. There is a fence in between us. We don't want to close that. So you keep your side, I keep my side, because we have negotiated, yeah? Yeah, so, and one result of this is that my selfishness or your selfishness is not addressed. That remains in the relationship, the selfishness or the self-centeredness. So, yeah, so we can negotiate to solve the conflict, and those will be the results. The fourth style that I would like to mention is where we try together to resolve this conflict. So my spouse or my roommate or my partner, my friend, and myself agree to talk about it, to share our feelings about it, and to agree on some solution, to agree to do something to help reduce the tension, to help reduce the conflict. Yeah. So we are moving towards resolving. We want to have a solution to the problem. Yeah. So we both will grow together in understanding each other's needs, in our ability to understand each other's needs. We can also grow in being able to strengthen our relationship as we work together towards a solution. The beauty of resolving a conflict is that it forces me and my spouse or my roommate and my friend to actually sit down and discuss and face the issue, face the conflict, and discuss it, see the feelings the other person has, look them in the face and understand what they're feeling about it. And when we agree, then the relationship can be strengthened as we both move together. Okay, so those are the four styles of conflict that I wanted to share for now. I mean, there's a lot in literature regarding resolving conflicts, but those four broadly will capture a lot of the styles that people try to use in order to resolve conflicts. Now, as Christians, we want to always try to see if the Bible has anything to say about our lives. Sometimes it has direct things to say, sometimes it doesn't, but it is what we refer to for directions. In the Bible, there's a story, an interesting story in the book of Genesis, which is the first book of the Bible, about a man called Abram, and he had a nephew called Lot. So they got into a conflict situation. And theirs was because the space and land that they were sharing became too small because they increased in number, both livestock and people. So conflict arose, a quarreling arose between them, especially between those who are herding the livestock of Abram and those who are herding the livestock of Lot, his nephew. They began to quarrel about space, about water, about grazing land. So Abram comes in and says, look, we are relatives. Let's not quarrel. Let's not fight. Let's do something about this situation. So we see Abram talking to his nephew Lot and telling him, look, can we appreciate our relationship by talking about this situation? Then he suggests a solution. Yeah. And when he suggests a solution, he's communicating that he values their relationship. So he says, look, let's part ways. Let's go different directions. There's a lot of land beyond where we are at. Can you go one side and I go the other side so that we don't have to fight or to quarrel? So this was the solution he offers to his nephew. And he gives his nephew priority to choose the best of the land to go to, which is interesting for an older person in that culture. It should have been the other way around. It's the nephew who should have deferred to his uncle. But here we see the uncle, an older man, deferring to the nephew, saying, take the best land, choose, then I'll take whatever you leave over. So this was quite interesting in a conflict situation for somebody who appreciates the relationship and wants the best for the other person and thinks about the other person first. And this is what we see in this story. Abraham thinks about Lot first. Okay, then they part ways and there was supposedly peace. But later, if you read the story beyond this chapter, you realize that Abraham had to save his nephew from attacks from some of the people of the land. And later on, God blessed him because there was a plan that God had through this whole process. So there are many examples in the Bible about conflict situations, and we just wanted to share with you this to provoke us into thinking about conflict resolution. So that's all I have for now, and I would like to now ask Patricia, my wife, to share with you just a few points that we have been struggling with ourselves as a couple and as a family during this lockdown. It's been very interesting to just review and to reflect on our lives as we struggle with the situation. Pat, please.
Good afternoon. So glad to share with you a few of what we have been struggling with. One thing that we have had to deal with is the adjustment of expectations of the space we have. You know, space, we realize, even if you have a big space and you are in that space with just, you know, you have been locked down in the space, it becomes very small. But in our case, it's not that it is even big space, it's a small space. So I love an orderly place, and it was difficult to be able to have an orderly place where you've got your husband working in the sitting room. Our sitting room became the office. So I have to back down and adjust my expectation of what do I expect in this home. If we are going to live here together, my expectations, I had to check my expectations. So the space, I decided the space is not going to be what is going to come between us. I decided to back down and make sure that I don't have to worry about it looking so immaculate. After all, there is nobody who is really coming even to visit because everybody's under lockdown. So that is about our space, and cleanliness in the house. It doesn't have to be immaculate. We are all in after all now. Another thing that we've had to struggle with, that we had to deal with, is our eating plans and our meals. We now, all of a sudden, you are in 24/7. You're not going anywhere. So you really don't get as hungry. So we wake up a little bit much later because we're not going anywhere. So we have been having 1.5 meals per day, meaning breakfast is not very heavy, it's a light breakfast. And then one meal that we have that is a heavy meal around 4 o'clock. That is our lunch and our dinner at the same time. And but in between, we had a lot of snacking, people going in and out of the fridge. So I don't know how much we were able to, how much difference that made, if that really amounted to the 1.5 meals, or it was 2 meals, or, you know, if you had to quantify it. But that's a place that we had to make adjustments. And when you have got a teenager in the house, you know, teenagers have got their way of eating and of having their drinks there. All of a sudden, they think you still go to the stores as many times as you normally went the other time. So they're eating as much as they want to eat. Eventually, slowly, things begin to dawn on them that these are not normal days, these are different days. And the outing, I love going out. I don't like staying inside. This is the time when I realized we take advantage of going out or of even visiting people. One thing that we actually got to realize was that the fact that visiting is so important. One of the times, actually we've had about a few times, but this one particular couple and their family really impressed us. We had a knock on the door. We normally don't expect any knock on the door unless it's the mailman because of the lockdown. But there they are, they appear, and then they knock and we look outside and we see them. So to keep the social distance, they stood way out there and we stood in our door and spoke. We were so appreciative of our friends. We realized that was really lovely, somebody checking up on the other. And about outing, you know, when we go to the stores, you know, Samson doesn't like going to the stores, but we had to agree somewhere. He became my driver. He would he would drive me to go to the grocery, to go and buy grocery when we're going, and he stays inside the car. And because for me, I love to shop, and these are not the normal days, I would go and get what we're supposed to get, but at least 5-10 minutes to walk around because I know somebody's waiting inside the car. So those are some of the adjustments we've had to make. Our daughter, we're very grateful that she was able to come back home. She was a first year, and she was out there staying on campus with the roommates. And we're thankful that she agreed to come back home because she would have made us to worry so much at this time, you know, thinking because social distancing is not so easy for young people. Teenagers, it's not so easy. So she came home, but coming home, after she finished her school, her online studies and finished her exams and finished everything, her day begins at 1 p.m. That's when she wakes up. So that in itself can bring in some little conflict in the home. So we decided that we will not argue about that, but we decided, can we as a family be able to at least have one meal a day together? The three of us can at least have one meal together. And that is the 4 o'clock lunch come dinner. We had that together. And another thing we agreed together to avoid conflict, said, let us have a short family time together where we can be able to read the word of God and pray together. That is at 8 p.m. so that she can be able to have time to talk to her friends and watch her movies and do whatever she wants to do. So those are some of the things that we have had, and God is teaching us many things. We are grappling through many things in this lockdown, but we are hoping that the lessons we are learning out of them we're going to keep them for our future and for our good. Thank you very much.
Okay, back to you, Rich.
Well, thank you so much for sharing with us personally out of your own situation. So I think what we're going to do now, I know what we're going to do now is we're going to go into some breakout rooms. We're going to do it randomly. And in the breakout rooms, what we'd like you to do is to share if you are facing any increased conflicts as a result of your being locked down or being more isolated. So one thing is just to share personally. If you do have a personal situation that you're facing that you're willing to share, then you can interact on that situation, and based on what Samson shared about how to seek resolution, then that would be a good scenario to talk about. But just in case no one in the room is either willing to share personally what you're going through or everyone is at peace, then we're going to give you a scenario to discuss and apply to that scenario. By the way, Samson, if you have a question that you want to ask, we're going to have a time of question and answers and interaction. But I'm just going to ask you one question before we go into our breakout rooms. You talked about the goal of resolution and the benefits of resolution. What happens if one person wants to resolve and the other person doesn't want to resolve?
They part ways.
Wait, if you're in the roommate situation, if you're married, you part ways?
Yeah. Anyway, I was just kidding. Yeah, that's a difficult one. In a roommate situation or in a marriage situation, there has always to be some level of willingness to discuss or to talk, and it requires being sensitive to the other person and bringing up the issue at a time and when they are willing and ready to talk about it. Yeah, because we have no option of running away from one another, from each other. So I would suggest that in such situation for roommates, really students, you sit down and talk and just share your feelings about it as you look for a solution.
Okay. All right. Well, I find that in a lot of conflict situations that one person wants to communicate and resolve it, but the other person doesn't. They go silent, they withdraw, and that's the real challenge. But okay, I am putting in the chat box now the first scenario. You can see it's a scenario about roommates. I know at least one person here who's an international student shared that they were experiencing some tension with their roommates. And look at this. This says, I share an apartment with 2 other roommates. We each have our own rooms, but share the living room and the kitchen. I love to cook at home and eat my ethnic food as much as possible. I also like to study during the day. One of my roommates studies mostly at night, but likes to relax and enjoy himself during the day, including playing loud music. Our kitchen is more of a mess now, as we have not figured out how to structure our eating times, and everyone dumps used utensils in the sink and leaves them there for most of the day and sometimes for days. I'm very stressed by these things. What should I do? And I think this is a normal situation that occurs between roommates, but I think the idea is it becomes heightened. That's the part of the issue about this current situation. Whatever issues are there already are going to be heightened in this scenario. And so we still need to talk about how to solve that type of problem in this scenario. Okay, so here's some questions you could talk about with this scenario. Share some areas of conflict that the persons in this scenario are experiencing. How should the roommate or partners respond or react? And how should they or could they work it through? Are there cross-cultural issues involved? So we're going to get into these breakout rooms, but I said this scenario should take second place to a real scenario. I mean, this is a real scenario, but it's not your scenario. So if you have your own situation that you're willing to share, then share that first of all and talk about that. But if not, then go and talk about this, and then we're going to get back together.
Time also can be a healer in relationships, depending on how long you want to wait. You know, some of the issues are so difficult to wait on. You know, so time may just aggravate them instead of helping heal. Yeah, and so the ideal is that both of you are willing to do something together to talk about it or to seek a common solution. That's the idea. But if it's not, then sometimes you just let things be and keep your side, keep your space. As you, if you are a Christian, you pray and you wait and pray about it, and you seek God about it. If you're a Christian, or if you're a believer, if you have some faith in something, yeah. But if not, then in the absence of two people agreeing to address the problem, it's pretty difficult to find a common way that will help heal the relationship.
One situation is to do some extravagant gesture of kindness, to pour heaping coals on the head of the person. The second thing to do is to appeal to their goal. Like, if you can find out what it is that motivates them, then you can appeal to that. Like, most people would like to have a peaceful home or a peaceful life. And if you can kind of say to them, hey, you know, I think there's a way that we can have a more peaceful house. Wouldn't that be a good idea if we could have a more peaceful house? They might say, hey, I'm at peace. It's only you who's not at peace. I mean, I'm not saying that it automatically works, but if you can find out how to appeal to the person in a way that doesn't like criticize them, doesn't put them down, doesn't say you're not doing your part, but is a common goal. Like, we want a peaceful house, and we want a clean house. We want a house that is like this. How can we work toward that together?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Rich, the first point you mentioned is very powerful in cross-cultural relationships, especially doing an act of kindness. I know of a friend who took out his roommate to the Panera Bread. The very first time he ever did it, because they wanted to talk, yeah. And this person who felt offended is the one who offered to go buy something at Panera Bread. They sat there, and they ended up talking about so many things, including personal issues from this other person that the offended person never even thought about. So acts of kindness have a way of drawing people out, appealing to something inside of us that softens us and makes us realize, hey, this person actually cares for me. Yeah. Rich mentioned this book. Yeah, it's a very, very nice book on cross-cultural issues. Yeah.
Well, we're going to end here, but thank you for staying on extra. And so we'll see you the next time we get together.